Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dr. Kiki Ramsey Show. Listen, y'all. Y'all always know I tell y'all behind the scenes, behind the stage, there's always chatter going on. And today we are going to really be diving into a topic that y'all know we really need to talk about. And it's called Let's Talk About Race. And I cannot wait for y'all to meet today's guest. She is amazing, dynamic. We already are vibing behind the stage. Y'all just hang on for 1 second. Y'all are going to get to meet her right after this. Dr. Nancy Dome.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Yay. So listen, we were backstage just, getting to know each other and just always vibing about, books and just recording and everything like that. And we're going to get into some of your book today because I cannot wait to share some of the things that you talk about in your book as we have this crucial conversation about race. And so before we dive in, I would love for you to just tell the Kiki Ramsey family about yourself.
Well, my name is Nancy Dome, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Epoch Education, which started. This is our 10-year anniversary. It's pretty amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I kind of looked around. I was like, where did the time go? Because it has been just hauling. So we started off specifically in the DEI space, supporting school districts, and then kind of figured out that the issues that we were experiencing were not just limited to schools. They were like everyone's having these issues around race and how to talk about it. So expanded about 4 years ago and really shifted our focus from being like DEI focused specifically to being a communications company that focuses on DEI. Because the truth is that, we can bring to light all these issues, but if we don't know how to talk about it so that we can get to a place of resolution, then it means nothing. And so I created a protocol when I was a professor at Cal State San Marcos that I found really worked. It was initially part of research, which you can understand being in higher ed, right? Mm-hmm. And then I was like, wow, I'm doing this in my daily life. I'm using compassionate dialogue and the RIR protocol, and it works everywhere. And so that really has now become our foundation. And that's what I do now. I speak, I'm writing books. I kind of unblocked all that and just really trying to figure out how to support not just educators, but really, people in my personal life and my professional life, businesses, how do we support them in moving beyond the kind of barriers that we're facing right now?
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so amazing. I can't wait to jump into all of that, juiciness. It just makes me so excited. So basically what you're doing, because we have a lot of synergies around the things that we're doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I love, talking about this. So share with us what your superpower is.
Okay. It's funny. I had to think about that. And how do you distill it down so it doesn't sound, I don't know, not anyway. I came up with intuition. I really think that that's my superpower is that I'm very intuitive. And so my challenge has been trusting it, right? How do you trust it? Because I think all of us have that in us, that intuition, that voice that speaks to us and tells us what's right for us. But I think most of us ignore it because we don't think it's the right thing to do, or I'm too afraid. And so when I listen to my intuition 100%, I get the results that I desire. And so I think that is my superpower, not just for my own life, but just how I intuit people and places and spaces. And I think it keeps me safe. I think it keeps me grounded, and it keeps me, being willing to take risk, because if my gut is telling me something, I pay attention.
Woo, I love that. I'm telling you, if more of us could do that, we'd be better off.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's about trusting yourself. But I love what you said is learning how to believe and trust
Yes.
yourself, right? Because we have the intuition. Some of us do. Not all of us have it. Because trust me, some of us ain't making good decisions out here. Okay, but 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 the ones who do have it, right? Sometimes it is hard to trust yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Why do
Yeah.
you think that? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that, I don't know if it's specifically about women, but I believe men have the same issue. But I think it's that there's so many rules about how things are supposed to be. And so when your intuition contradicts some of those rules and expectations, I think that we begin to feel like, oh, I need to do this, or my voice isn't, right. But I think when your intuition is encouraged early on to trust it, and when you start to test it and you're like, okay, when I listen, it works, and when I don't, it doesn't, then you have to build your own muscle, your own trust muscle for yourself.
I I love that. And I think if you can learn to do that, I think sometimes it's either reinforced or not reinforced, especially
Hmm.
when we're younger.
Hmm.
Like, and so, um, but thank you for that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about race
Yeah, let's talk
and
about it.
other hard things.
Hmm.
Um, so you wrote this amazing book
Oh, thank you.
that I had the privilege of listening to,
Mhm.
which that's why we were so like excited, right? Because I love listening to books on Audible. So thank you for going through that process, because as a person who just went through the process herself, I know how difficult that is. Um, so thank you for going through the process and putting it on Audible so that I can take a listen while I'm working out and doing all the things, right? Um, why did you write that book?
It was time. It really. So I created that protocol in 2006,
Mm.
and it was just something that was growing in me, that I was practicing, that I was living, and then I put it into practice around 2012,
Mhm.
and and then so I was teaching it, and people were really vibing with it, right? So my clients are like, this makes sense. And then finally I had a client who said, Nancy, the protocol is great, but when you're not in the room, we don't we don't know how to use it. Like we need to practice. And so that was kind of the beginning of this needs to get in writing. But I had this block for a long time about writing. I don't know, higher ed kind of damaged me. I don't know what it was. I have to say, I mean, I love higher ed, but there's a lot of bureaucracy in higher ed, and
Yes.
um, and so and all the technical writing, which I have to say, while I can do it, it's not what I love to do. Like when I
Mhm.
have to write technical stuff, it just kind of, well, so here I'm going to go kind of off track just a second. So my dissertation, right?
Yes.
My goal was to write something that my mother, who does have a high school diploma, could read, right?
Okay.
That she could understand. And I've been, my master's is curriculum and instruction. I've always been about making content accessible. And one of the critiques of my final draft of my dissertation was that while it was good, I needed to up the language,
Mm.
right? So I literally sat and changed words to up the language, and then it was accepted. And then the truth happened when my mom sends me a picture of her with my dissertation and a dictionary. And
Oh.
do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I'm like, so I've written something that my mom needs
Yeah.
a dictionary to understand.
Yeah.
And so I think that was kind of the block. And even though my book isn't written that way, I think that in my mind, having been, I was in higher ed for almost 10 years, that that writing, like if I have to write that way, then I don't want to write. And that's kind
Oh,
of really what was happening to me.
wow.
And so when I finally realized I'm not in higher ed anymore, it's my book, I can write it any way I want,
Mhm.
it kind of was able to flow then.
Well, I love it. So, because, but writing is, I think a lot of people want to do it, but it's it's not for the faint of heart sometimes. Like, I think people think it's easier than what it is,
Yeah.
especially to capture a reader,
Yeah.
right? Where a
Right.
reader wants to continue to turn the pages.
Right. And the kind of reader you want to capture, right?
That
So,
part.
and
That
so
part.
I want to write a book, and let's talk about race. Was that like that the average person could read and understand
Yes.
and be moved by
Yeah.
what I'm trying to teach and convey,
Yeah.
right? So why write something that is inaccessible to actually the people who need it the most, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's accessible. But of course, hope, from
Yeah.
my standpoint, it was beautifully written.
Thank you.
Um, so let's talk about the IRI process.
Hmm.
I love that. Like, I mean, I love how you were able to break it down in a book. And I think that is super relevant to the conversation that we're going to have today.
Hmm.
And I probably should have asked a question before that, but I'm just so excited about to get it, to get into the meat of this. Will you share what that process is? And you said, because you said you were already using it, and then you're like, okay, I really need to get this out to everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. So it started with the RIR, which is recognize, interrupt, and repair, right? And it was basically what I was thinking about is how do you break down a conversation so that you can show up fully, right? So that you can engage and not be defensive. And so the recognize, where I think when we're triggered, our recognize is always external. Like, I recognize that you just said something that triggered me or hurt me. And so what this did was like, but what do I feel about that? So I know that I'm feeling something, but we're not actually used to slowing down long enough to analyze what that feeling is. And so the first R was about, okay, when you trigger me, what are you triggering in me? So is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it fear? Whatever it is. And then what is my reaction if I don't ride my emotional wave? Because that's how a lot of discourse happens, right? A lot of disagreements and things happen because you say something, I've taken it, I'm offended now. When I'm offended, I get a little, mouthy, right? And so now I'm mouthy at you and we're doing this. And so I was like, well, what happens if, okay, I know I'm offended, and I know that when I get offended, I get mouthy or sarcastic in my case. What would happen if I could ride that wave and just like kind of take a deep breath and just push it down for a minute and get to a place of inquiry, which is the second I, right? So if I can say, okay, did I hear you right? Like, seek to understand first before I start going off the off the edge, right? And so that that inquiry place is that interrupt that says, are you trying to hurt me? Did I hear you right? Can you tell me more? Like, whatever that is. But it allows me to two things. One, to hear what you have to say to make sure, one, I'm understanding it, right? And two, it gives me an opportunity to kind of ride my emotional wave so that I'm not in reaction mode, that I'm in response mode, which is going to be a healthier interaction if I can respond rather than react. And then the second R, which is, recognize, interrupt, repair, is like, how do we stay connected after that interaction? Because we know all the time, like, you and I can have an interaction, it can be tough, we make it to the other side, but the more time that happens in between, the more our brain starts to create stories and scenarios about what happened. And so you begin to be unresolved again. So then the next time I see you, I may not acknowledge you. I may just give you a head nod. We see that happen all the time. And I say it in my book, the reason we talk about people is because we don't talk to them, right? And so I want to come back around and say, hey, I know that conversation was hard. Thank you. Like, I appreciate you hearing me out. I know we don't agree and we may never agree, but it doesn't mean that I can't respect you and that you can't respect me. So this idea that repair says we're reconnecting and trying to figure out how to stay connected after the fact, right?
Wow. This is, like you said in the book, like, it's not something like that's like astronomical and new, but the way you put it together and the way it really, really works is phenomenal. And I
Yeah.
love the, the examples that you gave, because I know sometimes people don't want to interrupt.
No.
Right? Like, some people want to go off. Like, if you feel wronged, right? Some
Yeah.
people just want to go there, right? And so how do you, like, with the recognize, for people who, because I consider that some people some people are hotheads, right? Some people just, don't have that emotional regulation
Hmm.
that that, you know, I
That
think
would be beneficial.
right, that would be beneficial. Like they don't have that.
Yeah.
Um, and how do you, I guess, teach somebody to recognize when they just don't have emotional regulation in the first place?
Yeah, it's practice. And we
Yeah.
actually created a deck of cards for them to practice. We encourage people creating their own scenarios to practice because, funny enough, the recognize is almost harder than the interrupt for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because again, we've got these walls up that, I'm protecting myself, so I'm not going to acknowledge that you hurt me. I'm not giving you that,
That
right?
part.
Even though all of our actions, we stop eating, or we eat too much, or we get depressed, or we start binging something, our body is reacting to that, but we're not acknowledging it. So there's a disconnect between what our heart and our head are doing. And so the recognize is sometimes where I spend most of the time for people to turn it inward, to really know themselves,
Yep.
because that's the key. Like we don't know ourselves well enough. And so we just know, like, I go off, so don't make me go off. Well, no one makes you do anything.
That part.
You allow them. And when you actually say that, don't make me do this, you're actually giving that person your power. And so for me, I always think about that. It's like, do you control me or do I control me? And I don't want you controlling me. And so you're
Right.
not going to make me go off. So I can choose. And this is the thing that I think is key to understanding compassionate dialogue in the protocol, is that I have this line of questioning that says, how do you feel when you feel this way? How do you react? Is it the reaction you want? And if your answer is and doesn't have the impact you want, if your answer is yes, then you don't need. I mean, if you want to go off, then do you,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if your answer is no, then you get a choice to do something differently, to reclaim your power. And so the protocol is really speaking to those people. If you're happy going off on people, then that's your journey,
Yeah.
right? But if you want to interact a different way, if you leave those interactions feeling bad and feeling sad and feeling guilty and all whatever those adjectives are, then there's another way.
Yeah, I love that because it gives, it gives you the power, right? And I always say that, as a psychologist and working with a lot of people on their behaviors, you get to choose, right? You get to create your own happiness, right? That's
Mhm.
totally what I believe. And so I think I love the fact that you say, hey, you get to choose how you respond.
Yes.
And if you want to respond in a positive way, or a more constructive way, then this is what you need to do is recognize.
That's right.
Right.
That's
I
right.
agree with you in the sense that recognize can be hard for some people because we do not know ourselves.
Yes.
We do not know ourselves. And one of the things I tell people do is sit with yourself in the
Yes.
morning, at night, like just be with your own thoughts because that is so hard. Why do you think that's so hard for people to
I
do?
I don't, and maybe because we don't like what we're going to see on the other side. I mean, I think there's some that, and also that we're just not used to it. Like that whole self-reflection,
Mhm.
even bordering on just meditation and knowing yourself, it's uncomfortable, because you have to peel back the layers of your life.
Yeah.
And you may not like what you see, but we have to give ourselves grace. And I think that's probably the hardest thing, is like, how do I give myself grace to say, you know what? I have made mistakes and I've learned from them, that these are not bad things. These are actually things that have created where I am today, right? So they've gotten me to this point. And so how do we shift the narrative around mistakes and whatever we're calling them, so that we see that they are all gifts,
Yeah.
for us.
Cool. I love that you said that. They're gifts, right? Like
Yeah.
just because something doesn't go the way we wanted it to go, it's okay. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like,
Right.
you
That's right.
know, there's
That's
some preservation that can go on there. Um, in your so as it pertains to compassionate dialogue and the protocol, how did you get to like this being the perfect example or the perfect way to talk about race?
It's that's a really good question. I think it's the perfect way to talk about anything.
Mm.
It's just that my focus is race, right?
Mhm.
And what I found is that using the protocol allows the user to be vulnerable, and I think that that's key. So I can be vulnerable, and I can be willing to take a risk to lean in and share what I'm feeling with someone who I might perceive as trying to hurt me, right? But someone's got to start that, right? Because both of us have got defenses up. So if I can show up vulnerable, what I have found, and I'm not exaggerating, that 90% of the time people meet me where I am. So when I soften, they soften.
Mm.
All right. And then sometimes they don't. And this is the thing, is that, like, so compassionate dialogue is not warm and fuzzy. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. People think compassion and then they get into the argument. They're like, it didn't work. I'm like, actually, it did work. But it wasn't going to be this easy conversation. And so sometimes you have to have those kind of things to get to the other side where you can be in those spaces, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, I just kind of feel like we we have to be willing to take a risk and know that we've got our kind of defense in the back pocket. I think
Mm.
that's the best way to say it, right? Like, I
Mm.
know if you don't respect my vulnerability, then I can put that defense back up. I got sarcasm, like, just right here, like it's ready to come out.
It's coming. It'll
And I think that's how, all of us have to find that, right? We have to know that just because I'm vulnerable, it's kind of like a snake. A snake is kind of going around and maybe eating, but the minute it's unsafe, it's like, and it's ready. And I think that's how we have to approach it, is like, I'm not going to let anybody abuse me. So if you don't respond to my attempts to compassionately engage with you, then my defenses are going to go up, and all those things that have served me well in my life and protected me are right there in the surface, right? And
Yeah.
so we need to know that and I think people need to understand that just because you're using compassionate dialogue doesn't mean that someone's going to return it back to you, right? But what this is really about is how we each choose to show up in the world, how we each choose to show up in the conversation. So I'm choosing to show up with compassion. And if you can't meet me there, then I'm choosing my repair is then divorce. My repair says, I don't need to be in this relationship anymore. It doesn't serve me, or in this job, or whatever the circumstances. And the repair means that I am taking care of myself and extricating myself from the situation.
Yeah. I listened to that story about your friend who is now who's,
Yeah,
who's
really good friend
a
now.
great
Yep.
friend of yours now. But I
Yep.
thought about that. I was like, man, that was pretty cool. Like,
Yep.
because you were able to kind of recognize your worth in that
Yes.
situation and then step back from it. And I feel like we as people, well, I know that same situation is going on with a friend of mine,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm recommending your book because I'm like, you need to get this, because every time I have a conversation with them, they're always complaining about what another
Mm-hmm.
friend did. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, if they're not treating you like you need to
Right.
be treated, why are you still in relationship
That's
with
right.
them?
That's right. That's
Right.
right. And and it was through my interruption that we actually have a deeper and better relationship,
Mm.
right? So that breakup for that time frame was necessary for her to reflect and to think about her treatment of me, and then to choose. Like, for me, it didn't matter if she came back into my life. I mean, I was clearly done, right? But it's also, how do we give grace to others to say, okay, they made a mistake and they can do better, and if they're choosing to do better, do we open the door, do we keep it shut, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have another friend who's really good at that. And she's just like, I choose not to re-engage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, like you said, that's a choice. And there's power in choosing, right?
Yes,
There's
yes,
there's there's power in that choice. And
yes.
so you know, so how do you kind of, address the resistance? Because doing this diversity work, as you know, there's a lot of resistance
Mm-hmm.
in the world
Mm-hmm.
around this work, which I think, it's always interesting because what diversity, equity, equity and inclusion is doing, it's just having people to treat people like humans.
Yeah.
Love, respect, dignity.
Yeah.
Like people are making it so much more, but
Yeah.
it's learning how to build, true trusting relationships. It's learning how to have open and honest communication.
Yeah.
That's what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. But
Hmm.
people try to make it something that it's not.
Hmm.
So how do you address the resistance?
Yeah. So I always start with this idea that this is not a zero sum game,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's people feel like for someone else to do better, they have to lose. Like that somehow we have a pie and there's a finite amount of slices. And if you get too many slices, that means I'm not getting a slice
Mm,
without understanding that the synergy is actually exponential, that
yeah.
when we come together, that it actually creates more. Right. And so that's how I approach the conversation. It's like, this is not the end. And it may feel like in the beginning, like you're losing something, but if you stick with it, you'll understand how much more you gain. And we have to, we're pretty much like creatures of habit. Like we like things a certain way. I'm used to getting it this way. I'm used to it going this way. And so there's really an invitation in this work to say it's going to look different. It's going to show up different, but your life is going to be richer, right? In the end of this. And so I think that's probably my biggest, like the biggest talking point is that we have to figure out how not to come from a mentality of lack, that there's
Mm,
not enough, and really say that, really understand that the universe is vast and we are capable of achieving anything we can imagine.
yeah.
Right. But we have to believe that it's possible and we have to be willing to make some sacrifices. Right.
You preaching. First of all, like, I'm like, just go ahead. Yep. Yep. Amen to that. Yes. But what? Okay, real talk,
Okay. Real talk.
right? Because I feel like we understand that, and when I say we, I'm talking about people of color.
Yep.
I feel like we understand that. But I feel like sometimes when I go into situations, I feel like other people don't necessarily understand
Hmm.
that there is abundance out there. And I also feel like they're not necessarily even aware
Hmm.
that they operate within that space of lack, right? Like we see it as lack because we understand that there's enough out there for everybody. I
Hmm.
mean, the world is infinite,
Yeah.
right? But that's I struggle with that,
Yeah.
sometimes because it's a constant reminder, it's a constant saying, hey, it's an abundant world.
Yeah.
My existence is not taken away from your
That's
existence.
right. That's
We
right.
both can exist here
That's right.
in this
Coexist.
same
That's
space
right.
and it be amazingly wonderful.
Yep.
But I think, so I don't, I know that it's hard to make other people aware, right? But I think maybe the interruption or the recognize is that part where you can share with other people how they came across to you.
Yes. Well, and also, part of the interruption is sharing a perspective. So there's three steps, right? It's like you can ask a question, you can clarify meaning, you can share impact, you can ask about intentions, right? And sometimes that sharing a perspective and sharing impact goes a long way for helping kind of open people's eyes, right?
Mhm.
And that's the vulnerability part, though, because if I'm sharing my experience of something, of my experience of you, my experience, like literally, I did a session, it was some years ago, and I had to travel to Minneapolis. And I'm dressed up, I'm speaking to the school board and executive team, and I walk into this building, the school site, and the two their white receptionists are talking to each other, and they don't even look at me.
Hmm.
They don't look at me, and so I stand there because I'm like, okay, let me. I got my watch. I'm like, let me look and see how long it's going to take before they acknowledge me. And they keep talking like, and I'm not there, and I can't be more than 2 feet away from them. And I'm a big Black woman, so it's not like they don't see me, right? So they're talking, and I just stand there. I don't clear my throat. I don't say anything because I'm like, the training starts now. And so Finally, after about 3 minutes, they're like, "Oh, hi. We're sorry we didn't see you there." And I'm like, "Okay, lie number one. Okay, what else you gonna say to me, right?"
Mm.
So they're like, "Well, can we help you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm the guest speaker for your board." Oh, so all of a sudden their affect changes. They rush me right upstairs. I get in the room. Can I get you some coffee? Can I get you some water? Everything changes. So, fast forward to me introducing myself and starting the training. And I say, I want you to know about my experience that just happened downstairs. And this is not about you going back and reprimanding them. I want you to know that if they can do it to me, who's dressed up in a suit walking in this door, to train you, what are they doing to parents? What are they doing to families when they walk in the store?
Mm.
Right? What is happening to them that they are invisible? So if they really didn't see me, then I, as a 5'10", 210-pound Black woman, you don't see me? Like, um,
Right.
and if you saw me and didn't acknowledge me and just even give me that second to say, just give me 1 second, let me finish this thought, right? Then what is that saying? What's the messaging, right? So
Mm.
so when I think about this, I believe that we have to bring to light the things that people really, and I think that is that this idea that I have to assume positive intent,
Yeah.
right? So I have to assume that you don't know better, which is why you're doing this way, which allows me to show up in space with compassion. And then you once you know better, you then have the opportunity and really obligation to do better. And if you don't, then I know the next time around. Again, because the I get to choose every time how I'm engaging.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that it is being willing to acknowledge. And I think sometimes we really feel like why waste my time? I know there's people and there plenty of like Black people who do this work who actually don't love my approach, right? Because and it's okay. Like for me, my belief is that every single one of us is necessary to do this work, because I will speak to a certain group of people and they are going to resonate with another group of people, and there is enough people out there that need some work that there's no lack, right? And so you don't have to like my approach. This is what suits my spirit, right? This
Yeah.
approach, like my goal is always about trying to connect.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
and so, and you know what, I was that Spitfire. I'm 57 years old. When I was 20, 25, I was a Spitfire. I was like in people's face, and you know what? And it suited me then, but it doesn't suit me now. That's not
Mm.
how I want to go out.
Yeah.
I
No.
don't want to go. I don't want to go out in anger, and
Yeah.
I want to go out in love. I believe that there's people think love and hate. It's not love and hate. It's love and fear. Those are the opposites. And I'm not going out in fear. I'm
Yeah.
going out in love. So
I love that. Look, I love that. Um, because I have a positive psychology methodology,
yeah.
right? That we
Hmm.
use. And so it's similar in the sense that we focus on strengths in
Yes.
order to help people build, communication and relationships in organizations. And so I believe that works better than anything, right? Like in the sense of you track more bees with honey than you
That's right.
do vinegar, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't believe in the whole fire and brimstone kind of like you did this and you need
Hmm.
to pay. Nobody's learning from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody walks away feeling good from that. And not that you have to walk away feeling good from it, but the goal is that you walk away potentially learning something about
Yeah.
yourself,
And feeling
right?
empowered to change. Right?
Exactly.
Like, okay. And there's no shame to the fact that that's where I was on my journey, right? Each
Mhm.
of us. I mean, God, thank goodness that there was no internet and stuff when I was growing up, right? Because I would have been in trouble. I probably would not have the career I had today. So, but we don't have that luxury today. And so, but we have to believe that people can change if they want to. I can't change you. Like, I'm clear on that. But if you want to change, it's fully within your ability to do so.
I love that. Like, I that's the only reason I think that I myself and potentially maybe you can even do this work is that you feel like people innately have good intentions or that the world can get better,
Mhm.
right? Like why do this work if there's no hope, right?
Yes,
And so I
yes,
believe that there's still hope, which is the reason why I still do this work, which is
absolutely.
why it's still dear to me.
Preach, girl.
Right? Like,
That's
I
what,
mean, that's the
yep.
only, but that's the only way because I mean, in your book, you said, you've run across a lot of, Black people who are tired. We just get
Yes,
tired. Like,
yes. And that's real.
it's real.
It's
Because
real.
I tell my audiences, like, right, I can't take my diversity off, right? I'm gonna be Black
Every day, all day.
every day, all day, and I'm gonna be a woman. So I can't change that, right? So it does become tiresome, but I always think about the flip side of it. Like, it's an assignment.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was given,
yeah, yeah.
right? It's an assignment. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. Look at the time. Look at that. Look at the time. So tell me, as we are trying to head downhill here, how can somebody like just give us an example of how somebody can like implement the protocol when they face a difficult conversation, whether it be around race or just I mean people face a lot of leadership just
Hmm.
conversations in the organizations as well. Give us an example maybe of how they can properly use that.
Well, I mean, you can always use it, right?
Okay.
So, and I think that the key is practice, just like
Okay.
anything. So, if you wanted to play a sport, an instrument, learn a foreign language, they all have one thing in common. You got to practice. And the reason we are so bad at having these, crucial conversations is because we never practice. So every time we get in one, it's like it's the first time, right? So we're nervous, our body is like freaking out, and we don't know what to do. So we shut down, we attack, we do all the reactionary things. And so, the best way to utilize this, because honestly, my book talks about it. That's why we have the intrapersonal, the interpersonal, and the organizational, is that you will find that they're all connected. So if I'm working on myself, that intrapersonal, if you think about the cogs in the wheel, everything's connected. So as I get healthier, my relationships get healthier, where I work gets healthier. If I'm starting in the organization, as the organization gets healthier, the relationships within the organization gets healthier and the individual gets healthier. And so this idea that the protocol is really, it's really a lifestyle, right? And it's just slowing down enough to say, okay, I need to know and understand myself, and each interaction is a choice for me. I get to choose to interact. I get to choose to interact with compassion and grace. I get to choose to interact with sarcasm and anger. I get to choose to disengage. But it's all a choice. And I think that is the power and the key, is that it is not a default. Like I've run away from this conversation because I'm scared and now I'm pissed off that I didn't say anything or angry. It is I've chosen to disengage because I just don't have the energy today. Right. And that I can let it go. It's like, tomorrow I may have the energy. And so it's more that it's more that about how do I really internalize these steps, the recognize and understanding myself, how I respond, how I want to respond. What are my strategies to interrupt? What questions can I ask? Is it a time to share an impact or a perspective? And then how do I stay connected in that repair? How do I come back around? And the thing is that repair can happen a day later, a week later, a year later. Like
Mm.
it's never too late to repair those things. And so, one of the things I share all the time in session is that if there's something that's sitting on your heart that you've been holding on to, that when you think about it still causes you a reaction, that causes you pain or sadness, you can resolve that. Like that, it's never too late to do that. We've all had bad things happen, but all of them don't create those reactions in us. So if you're getting a reaction, then that means there's still work to do around that.
Yeah, I love that. And a lot of us got a lot of unsettled business
Yeah.
to work on. I
Ain't said a word.
I can think of a couple right now. I'm like, "Ooh, I need to go do some repair."
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This is such an amazing conversation. Me and you
Oh,
can just keep on talking.
yeah.
And so thank you for the information. If you all have not, please go out and get Dr. Nancy Dome's book. Let's talk about race and other hard things. Dr. Dome, please tell us what's going on with you these days and how people can get in touch with you.
Girl, we busy.
That's a good thing.
Well, I have to say, I always say I'd love to be out of a job because that means that we are healing, right? And I'm an educator by trade. I'd go back to the classroom or do whatever, but this work is really calling to me. So right now I'm really focused on I'm writing another book, my third book. I'm gonna show just so this is the one that we've been talking about today. This is the one that came out in a month ago, 2 months ago.
Okay.
So, we're talking about that knowing thyself. So this is the compassionate dialogue journey.
Okay.
And the idea that if you really want to kind of dive into really knowing yourself, and like internalizing the protocol, then that's a good study. And so right now I'm focusing on my third book, which is really, we got to make a name right now that's just called Glimmers. It's kind of like a reflection, short stories kind of thing about how, compassionate dialogue came along and just my kind of life experiences that set me up. So I'm really kind of focused on that. But they can find me on drnancydome.com, just if they want to know more about me. And then, of course, epocheducation.com for my business. Epoch does a lot more of the kind of systemic institutional work. And then I do a lot more of the coaching, keynoting, kind of more personal. And I think that's just kind of where I am. As I get older and think about how I want to end my career, I want to end it in positivity. I really want to make connections with people and support people and growing, and then for me to continue to grow too.
We love it. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for coming on to the show and sharing your wisdom and sharing yourself with us and sharing your energy. It's been such a lovely conversation.
Oh, thank you. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. I can talk to you all day, girl. This could have gone on all day. I know nobody want to watch it, but I could talk to you all day.
Exactly. And we will after the show. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all for being here. As always, we love you so much. As always, you can get this episode and other episodes of the Dr. Kiki Ramsey Show on all of your local podcasting stations. And if you are a woman who needs support, I invite you to join the Happy Women Lead community. Just go to kikiramsey.com and you will see us there. Thank you, Beth Miller, for joining us live. I can't wait to see you in a couple of months in Niagara, New York. Awesome. All right, y'all. Love you. As always, you know that you get to create